Ba-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum. Joel Felsenstein, I say this every single time. I never get tired of saying it. Thank you, my brother. Thank you for that intro, outro video. We get so many great compliments about that. Different, not less. I appreciate the work that you're doing with Rockstar X and how you're shining a light for the neurodiverse community and for the autistic community. You are amazing, my friend. I can't shout out enough about what you're doing. Today, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Come in. Come here. Come here. Let me tell you something. We are about to blow your mind. You're about to get your mind blown. Holy cow, we've got some crazy people in the house today. We've got This Is Fantastic. And I feel like I'm just going to, as I'm announcing, I'm just going to keep hitting the applause button. I'll wait. I'll do the announcements first. We'll tell you about everybody that's here. But this is so fantastic. So Desiree Goldey, she is the Director of Talent and Culture at ZRG. Kylie Van Luyn is the founder and CEO of Elevated Coaching and Consulting Global. And Marie Ristow, Dr. Anne Marie Ristow, See Things Differently. She is Systematic Equity Edits. Thank you for being in the house. Tiffany Castagno, CEPHR, creating the evolution of professional HR. I read it upside down and backwards. Oh my goodness. But we have 4 fantastic ladies in the house here to talk today about leading from the front. And we're going to dive in about inclusion and really hone in on what that means, what it looks like, and from their different perspectives, what this conversation needs to be. But first, let's give it up. I waited. I wanted to do it all the way through, but they wouldn't have heard me. So, we would have blocked all of that goodness going on. So thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to try to handle the comments and the people that show up, but I want to start off, and we'll start off with Desiree. And Desiree, you know what? I think we actually talked about this differently in our little, in our planning group, and I'm just punting. But Desiree, I really want to, let's start out and let's just do this first. When we're talking about leading from the front and we're talking about what it means to have that kind of intentionality, the first thing I want to talk about is, what does inclusion mean? What is that word and what should it look like? And we'll start the conversation from there.
Yeah, I think so. So it's so amazing that as I've done this journey through really having leaders walk the inclusion walk of what that looks like, right? And it's sometimes just about how you can actually make people feel accepted. And it's so weird that people don't understand that at the fundamentals of leadership, right? We get into these leadership positions and we're so excited by the title, right? We're so excited that we got this, and I'm a director, so I can say that, director role. And then we're so excited about that, but we actually don't know what that means to lead humans, right? Because there's humans at the table, right? And there's humans that have to actually be led. And they have to feel like there's something, that there's a common cause, right? And there's something that and I'm going to bring the belonging thing into this because it's also my thing, but like bring in the belonging piece of this. So inclusion and belonging, I feel like, are tied, but inclusion means so many things, but it's how we bring your different perspectives, different diversity of thought, how we bring all of those things to the table and make something happen. I believe if you bring all those things together, you can make something happen in a really positive way. If we choose to exclude all of those things, exclusion is a big thing to me too, because we talk about inclusion all the way, but there's exclusion as well, right? We exclude these thoughts, right? So inclusion means that we're allowing those things to come in and we come to some kind of really great whatever it is, right? Product, thought, process, team, whatever that thing is, we're bringing it all together and we're making something happen. So that's inclusion for me, Jason.
Kylie, what does it mean to you?
Very similar things. From, I guess, my experience as an employee, but also now doing the work that we do with leaders and with teams, the most common thing that we hear from teams when we're going through big organizational transformation, or, you know, a company starting out on their DEI or their psychological safety journey, it's that people don't feel seen, or people say, I just feel invisible here. And it usually comes during those times of enormous change, enormous disruption. I've had those conversations actually all this week with a client and then with their staff. And unfortunately, they're losing really amazing people because they're saying, I'm not seen and I'm not heard. And I said, but what does that translate to you as a human being? And they said, well, I don't feel respected. And I've been here 20 years. I don't feel valued. And so, you know, going back to what Desiree was saying, people then start to, even people that have been in an organisation for a long time, which is where that sadness comes from when they're feeling these things, they disconnect, they tend to withdraw, and then they start to say things like, oh, maybe I don't belong here. And so that sense of belonging is really lacking. And the other thing that I would say as well is during those big changes, and if change isn't managed effectively by leaders, and staff aren't taken on that journey, whatever that change is, they typically disconnect because they can't see the role that they play as an individual and what their role is within that bigger picture. So we all come to work with a purpose, most of us. Hopefully we've found out what our purpose is and that's what drives us. But when people feel that lack of purpose or alignment with the company vision and mission and values, that's when, you know, people have that lack of belonging and lack of safety, and they start to feel like they're not valued anymore. So that's what inclusion means to me, the opposite of all of those things I've just described.
Tiffany, you're up. What does inclusion mean to you?
Yes, I love all of what Desiree and Kylie shared, and I think of meeting people where they're at, and I look at it as what is and what isn't, and I love the thought of being seen, and so I always describe it as seen, heard, valued, and appreciated. What do I bring to the table, but also not putting me as an employee into a box that is just the box of the organization, and not seeing me and valuing me and including me in decisions, and even why something may not happen. So that's often left off the table, is not connecting people into the strategy of the organization. I've certainly been there where I've gone all the way to the top and north. How my ideas are valued, how I fit into not only just from a role clarity perspective, but how my thoughts and ideas can contribute, and to kind of point of purpose. Everyone needs that, which means that I joined an organization to make sure that I am seen, valued, heard, and appreciated. And those are the things that I like my clients and their teams to feel. And really comes down to, where are people at? And what is it that they need at an individual level versus trying to stuff them into the box of, this is what the team needs, this is what the organization needs. But within that, understanding that, yes, we should have people strategies. So it's at its basic level, I believe, just seeing people for who they are and allowing what to be. I think Desiree talked about allowing what is, and not being afraid of that.
I love that. Dr. Ristow, let's go. What do you think? What is inclusion to you?
So I absolutely agree. And we've had some conversations about all this. And I think leading for inclusion to me, with all these things that were already mentioned, is really about hitting head on through discussion, through debate, through banter, through policies, practices, procedures, and really push those conversations around the problems that are happening, bring it to the surface, and force society, force your workplace to deal with them. You know, like, really, it's our role and responsibility as leaders to not let the new shiny pennies take priority over the human centrism that we're missing in our environment right in front of us by saying, oh, like I'm not going to take that one on today. I think it's just so important. I think that it will really deplete the amount of anxiety, the conflict that's happening, and the lack of cultural cohesiveness that we find in a lot of our environments when we do take on those courageous conversations and look at how are we excluding by either what we say or do or what we don't say or do, and what we hold our people accountable to and hold ourselves accountable to.
What does it mean? And I'm just going to leave it for the rest of the conversation. I'm going to leave it open for everybody to kind of jump in whenever they feel like it. But what does it mean to you when we were naming this and you guys came up with leading from the front? What does that mean to you in the context of inclusion and this conversation? What does it mean?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give a little bit of, so I thought about this hard before we went into this live, and I was like, this is such a great title because of the fact that if you are in a leadership position, you have to take the stance that you're leading from the front. That doesn't mean that you're going with status quo and what's happening. You're actually making a change or doing what makes sense to you and leading from the front. So you're bringing people behind you. When I got into my role, it was super important to me as the person that I was to bring my team with me, right? Like to bring them into their values and understanding and bring them to mentorship and do all those things. And that's what leading from the front looks like. And I think what we get lost in is these moments of like, okay, well, I got in this leadership position and I'm just going to make metrics and make revenue and make profit because, that's what I'm here to do. Right? That's what we get caught in. But you also have to have that other piece of like, oh my God, I have a team behind me. And they have to like do things and be like subjected to these metrics and accountability and all those things. And how do they do that in a responsible way? And how do I make them feel included and all of those things? And so how do you lead from the front? You do it in an inclusive way. You do it like it brings your team with you. It means metrics, accountability, and to profits, but it also means all of those other pieces of the puzzle. And I think that what's happening right now in corporate America is we're having those metric moments and account and like we're responsible to the board and we're making presentations, but these pieces of the puzzle that we're missing or the like human part of it. We're missing that human piece of how we bring ourselves to work. Like I have a family. My whole job is not this job. I have another job, right? So I need to bring those morals and values and all that stuff to the table. And how do you make that work for your entire team? That's a task. And it's not natural, right? It's not natural to everyone who gets put in this position. I talk all the time about middle management, right? Like we move people from ICs to middle and just like, okay, go figure it out. Like go do that thing, right? You literally you're off the line. And I'm just using this as we're moving off the factory line and putting you in a management position and go lead those people. And by the way, you were one of them, right? So now how do you bring them in? It's a whole experience. And until you have people on this call to figure out how you do that responsibly and also coach them to get to that next level, it's a task, right? It's a thing. And so if leading from the front is how you look at your organization, it's a different level. It's a different mindset. It's a different thing, right? Absolutely. I'll get off my soapbox.
No, please. No, please. That's fantastic. People talk about succession planning and they talk about, that the workforce planning aspect. but there is so much. We take the P&L,
Yep.
and the P&L rules everything. And we forget the fact that if we want the P&L to thrive, then we got to start pouring into our people. And the more we upskill and reskill and train and find out about our people so that we can offer them the psychological safety, we can let them bloom as they want to, because there are people that are perfectly happy if they're never a manager ever in their day,
Absolutely.
ever. And there are people that, hey, I want to climb, I want to grow, I want to move. How do I do it? How do I do it? And they're very aggressive. So everybody's different. But just because someone has done well, they showed up every day, they have a great attitude, they do all the stuff in job A, does not make them a leader. It doesn't mean that they're going to be equipped emotionally to take over and lead people. So leading from the front has to include the ability to have courageous conversations, to have empathy, to create space for other people, and to value the human existence when they're growing. So dive right in, ladies. None of you are shy, so.
I always say leading from the front can't be done from a corner office. So when clients come and say, I don't understand why this inclusion initiative isn't working, like we're not getting buy-in. And then you sit and observe just even for an hour and you think, that's because you're not visible. You're not leading from the front. So people don't see you, and you're not willing to roll your sleeves up and get actively engaged with your people, which tells them they care, right? It translates as that for people. It's like if I can see my leader out of his or her office getting involved in the trenches when we're going through, some challenging times, or, trying to lead and role model new behaviors, or whether it's an inclusion piece or whatever the change might be, if the leaders aren't leading by example, getting out, rolling up their sleeves and getting in and showing people, their people, that they care and that they're beside them doing these things, then they're just not going to see it. So I always say leading from the front can't be done from a corner office. It means to me being visible, engaging at the front while still being able to see the forest through the trees. So it's really that matter of perspective. But to do that, it's everything, you've just been talking about. You have to be a leader that already has a high degree of emotional intelligence.
Absolutely.
These poor leaders, I feel terrible for them. You talk to new leaders that they say, I've been here for 10 years and I just kind of fell into this role because of my years of tenure. But very quickly you realize that they're lacking those critical people skills. And a lot of it is emotional intelligence. They don't have the self-awareness about sort of where their own strengths lie, but also where their areas of development lie. They don't have those skills around self-regulation and regulating their own emotions. And they're usually also the leaders that find it really difficult to understand how to motivate their team and how to tap into, being a strengths-based leader and things like that. So that's, I guess, my 2 cents worth. It really comes down to, building that trust, empowering your teams. I always say empower the people who do the work to make the decisions about the work. Don't try and force that on them.
Yeah.
You want to watch your bottom line thrive, pour into your people and let them.
By the way, how about do that?
Yeah.
And how about stop worrying about the bottom line? But I really do want to pick up on what Kylie said. Like, self-awareness for me is a thing that I feel like leaders lack, right? When we get into these, they feel like they're leading and they don't even understand the skill sets they're missing, right? The empathy piece, the emotional intelligence piece, the inclusion piece. They actually think they're doing a good job because they're hitting their numbers. Right?
Metrics, yes.
Metrics.
My KPIs are fantastic.
They're amazing, right? And so that's all they hear, and then their people keep leaving.
Yeah.
What's happening, right? And so that, for me, self-awareness is a huge piece of inclusion. So I just wanted to pick up on that. Thank you for saying that.
Well, and I was also thinking about when you were talking earlier, Desiree, it really is about that unapologetic stance. And from a trainings perspective, people can get caught up in that to-do trap, but they can Google how to do spreadsheets, how to do the skills of it much more easier than you can the relationship responsibility of it. And so when we look at pouring into our people, Chasen, and that psychological safety, it's about looking at passion and practice and persistence that people have. And those are some things that you can coach, but it takes the attention to and the vulnerability of being willing to say, oh yeah, as a leader, I'm not doing this right now, and I need some support in being able to change that so that my team and my people can be better for it and I can be better for it.
Absolutely.
I love that, Anne-Marie.
That's fantastic. We talked off camera about, when we were talking about the premise of leading from the front, you were going to go through, and we were going to make inclusion really the focus of this conversation. One of the things that I mentioned to you guys was something that just kind of blew my mind. We have a thriving YouTube channel with HR for You, but and I follow the metrics and the how we're doing on certain days and stuff like that, just because I want to know if there's different times that we should do certain things or whatnot. But I look at our shorts and our video podcasts, which we are not live. It's one of the few things that are not live for us, and that we leave them on our Funky Friday posts on Friday. And the thing that blew my mind was in the history of us doing, this is our 4th season of having the Time to Change podcast. Chris Holmes had a conversation with me about inclusion, and it just broke all kinds of numbers. Like literally the short got, if I took like the last 6 shorts from every single podcast episode and combined them, there were as many people commenting and as many people showing up to view this. And it just struck a chord with me that people absolutely agree with everything you're saying. We're tired of working for companies where all they talk about is the metrics, the KPIs, this, that, the other, and they do not realize that if they want productivity to soar, if they want their bottom line to just flourish, then start out by finding out what your people need, what makes them happy, how they like to work, give them the tools to be successful, allow them to fail forward, allow them to bloom where they are, give them the safety to ask questions, to be who they are, to show up as they are at work, and only start to promote people that want to be promoted and that are growing with the company, and that you are pouring into them and teaching them the things that they're lacking, and that you yourself recognize the things that you need, and that you, just like Kylie was saying earlier, I feel so bad for these leaders that are going like, I don't understand what's happening. I don't know. It's that Ricky Bobby moment. I don't know what to do with my hands. Like, I've been here for 10 years and I feel like this should be working, but it's not working. Well, let's go back. Let's take 2 steps back and take a look at how you're approaching this. And if it doesn't start with approaching it by putting people first, you're already behind.
Yeah, I agree. And this goes back to self-reflection as well, not just self-awareness. Like, I always talk to leaders that come to me and they're like, Desiree, I just need 30 minutes of your time. I'm like, okay, what I want you to do some actual self-reflection about where you're at. Because if you're not in a good place, how are you going to lead the team in that next place, right? And so if you don't know where you're at, if you don't understand what your inclusion means to you, what does inclusion mean to you? Because most of them can't even define it, right? What does that mean on their particular team, right? What does that mean for their team? What does that get to them to the next place? If they can't start with themselves, they can't lead anybody, right? I can't put my socks on or tell my wife what to dress like if I don't understand what that means or what I value in how she dresses, right? Or what my socks should look like every day, right? So I can't do that for my team. I understand what my values and what we should do as a unit to bring us to the next level. And I can't do that without understanding myself. And so there's some definite moments of self-reflection and self-awareness that have to come before we even go out and say, I'm going to lead a team, right? And so many, like Kylie said, we get in these positions, we make these leaders who are like, I don't even know what to do. And they put their hands up and they're like, I'm leading a team and we're doing all this stuff, but they haven't even done any self-reflection before they got promoted, right?
Yeah, and
So
if we
there's this,
don't have that self-reflection,
right,
it's like our people never get around to doing the things that they really can do
yeah,
because we haven't made that context personal. We haven't
yeah,
localized our own humanity of this is me as a leader. And here I am being raw with you in knowing that I am doing the self-reflection and I'm not liking some of the things that I'm seeing. And this is how I'm changing it. And so then it can make it more immediate and more like, my gosh, if my leader is doing it in that way, I can do it in that big or small way as well.
yeah.
And then they get the opportunity to really blossom and grow and be connected to the culture of the workplace so that the turnover rate and the retraining and the constant revolving door can stop because people have a better sense of belonging because they're connected not only within the workplace with a leader that's showing them how to do that, they're recognizing that work is one element of their full life and the full landscape of what they're bringing their true selves to.
I think a lot of that too involves like this, like the lack of awareness, certainly, but within that, lack of empathy, sometimes lack of confidence, lack of how do I lead out front when I maybe am afraid to do that, or how much of my cards do I show? Because we've been conditioned by our workplaces, by society to get education, to climb the ladder, to do all of the things. And yet what we haven't been brought forward to is it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to not know it all. And even if you're a people leader, that is okay. And to feel like you can be in a psychologically safe space yourself. And if you don't feel that as a people leader, well, how are you going to lead a team? If you're not engaged and you're not poured into as a leader, well, how is the success of a team going to happen? It's not. And so a lot of times this is why we see people shying away from feedback, or they want to be kind. And it's like, well, if I tell them that they're doing an okay job, and maybe they are, but we all deserve feedback to grow and learn as people leaders, as individual contributors. And we have to be self-led in order for that to start. But if we don't have the tools and resources to do that, that's going to be a problem. And I think when we look at these KPIs, the metrics, all the things, we want to throw all the fancy, shiny toys at it. But like we fail to get to the root of what's happening and having the right conversations at the right time.
I agree. And like organizations aren't giving the right tools, right? And I heard that, right? We're not giving them the tools to succeed in that moment in inclusion and leading from the front. We're not giving them those tools to succeed, right? We're saying, go ahead, right, and do this thing and hit those metrics, but we're not going to back that up by any of the things to get you there. And that is a huge failure of corporate America right now. Like we are not setting people up for success in leadership. I bottom line, believe that. I will die on the hill over that thing. Like you are not setting people up. You are not you are not setting people up to be successful as leaders. What you're making them successful as KPI hitters, perfect, like great, but you're not setting them up to be leaders of humans. And that is a huge issue in corporate America.
Yep. It's go do it and good luck.
Right. Bye-bye.
Yep. We're not going to tell you what it is or
You got this. You got this.
You got it. You got it.
Like,
You can do it.
And we'll take you for happy hour at a pizza party later.
Oh my God.
But we're not going to show you how to do any of your work.
We'll bring in the foosball table.
Yeah, we're going to bring in the foosball table, Jason, and like roll it up to them and be like, you can tell all your new employees we have a foosball table. Like,
and every Friday we'll sing Kumbaya together. And yeah, this is fantastic.
Horrible stuff.
And you may even get a bonus that you didn't earn, right? Like this happens too. Like,
yes, correct.
What message are we sending? That is not leading out front.
Yes. Yeah. And then it's always, and I want to say to Melissa's comment in the chat, like, it is a shock to people that they don't know how to lead, right? It almost comes to a really bad place when people start to leave their teams. They're like shocked, right? And they can't figure out why that's happening. But it's not because they're leading from a core place. They're leading from a metric place and the company place. They're not leading from their hearts. And I hate to see it.
Yeah, not the pizza party. Not the pizza party. Not the Margarita Friday, mixer when half of your people don't drink.
Just
that's not inclusion.
You're frowned on because you don't show up.
That's actually exclusion, by the way, because most people don't even want to do that, right?
No,
I don't want to do a happy hour with you people. I don't want to have a pizza party. Maybe I don't like pizza. It's actually excluding people. So just saying.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So many, I just keep writing down notes. I'm like, Iron, I want to come back to this. I'm going to come back to this and come back to this. I definitely want to come back and talk about exclusion because you just mentioned it. We've talked about it a couple of times during this, but I think that, and this goes to something that Kylie and all of you are really alluding to and saying out loud is just EQ eats IQ for breakfast every day. There are so many people smarter than this hockey mug. That's it. That's my one time, Jody. Jody told me I could only say that one time per show. So that's it. There's my one time, Jody. There's my one time.
Yay, Jody!
I'm not even going to repeat it. But anyway, now I'm just squirreled. Now I'm gonna lose my whole train of thought now. But I've seen so many different surveys talking about someone can be brilliant, have all of these PhDs, or masters, they're so much knowledge, they're brilliant human beings. But the EQ piece of leading people is so much more important. It is just incredible. And for the longest time, and so I'm going to say this, and I want to hear your comments, and then we're going to edge into exclusion. But I thought for the longest time as a young HR leader, I felt like you can't teach EQ. I thought, and I know Melissa is frowning on me right now. Melissa, the empathy queen and EQ designator. I know. I did. For the longest time, I thought, this is an innate thing. You can't train this. You either have it or you don't. And I admit, and this goes back to something you said, Anne, you as a leader have to be willing to say, I goofed, I made a mistake, I was wrong. And I am the first one, and my wife will attest to this because she's been married to me 25 years in October. She will attest to the fact that I will put my hand up, and I want to put it up before anyone calls me out. I want to put it up first and say, I goofed. I made a mistake. I want to own that. I want to live. I want to make amends. I want to do the right thing. So I was wrong. You can teach it. And why is it so important, ladies? And how do you teach it to people? And then we'll move into exclusion.
You can teach it. I'm just going to jump in. I believe you can, but I will say there's a caveat. Without the self-awareness piece first and the self-reflection, it's really difficult to do that leadership coaching piece and develop those skills with people, with leaders that are lacking a lot of the other emotional intelligence skill sets. Without that self-awareness, you usually met with a lot of ego and bravado. That's my experience, and a lack. I always say, when it comes to staff performance or leadership development, people are either unwilling or there's an inability. And it's really difficult when there's also, those two things are combined.
Yeah.
So if there's an inability, as far as somebody needs to learn a skill to be a more effective leader, as a coach, it's really difficult, almost impossible, but not, if there's also an unwillingness to learn.
Yeah.
So if they don't have that self-awareness, and they're also not, and I do blather on about, being in the right mindset a lot, but if somebody's not in that growth mindset and they're not willing to learn and accept feedback and develop that knowledge and that awareness of, some of their own deficits and areas for development, it's really difficult for leaders to develop. So that's just a little bit from me there, but I will go into the psychological safety piece because that's me. Without the EQ, and we see a lot of. I always say in our work that no human being can thrive if they're in survival mode long term, and we're seeing that with a lot of humans right now. But also, I always say to leaders that we work with, you're a leader. You have the influence and the opportunity to either harm a human being or empower these human beings. And it's really down to your behaviors and your habits, but also your mindset around how you're going to do that. And that choice is yours. So without emotionally intelligent leaders, that's where we see a lot of that, those psychological injuries and workplaces that are really, really lacking psychological safety because the leaders aren't aware how to foster those environments.
I just want to piggyback on that and say, like, these organizations, that most of them do not allow for this EQ moment, right? They've almost blocked leaders from having it. And so I live in this drama of corporate America all the time. And that's why I'm always talking about doing better, because we live in this like trap of like saying, okay, we want you to have this empathetic inclusion moment, but we also want you to live up to this standard of this corporate value that probably doesn't even allow that to happen, right? So, and that's the qualm. It's like, even if I had a leader that wants to do all the great things for inclusion and self-awareness and self-reflection, which I believe in, we get trapped in these organizations that are trapping them by not doing it, right? And so it's such a trap and a circle that it has to stop at some organizational level, that we say like, okay, stop. Like, you have, maybe it's, I'm going to give an example, 20 leaders that need to do better at EQ, right? Right. And so you have to stop doing what you're doing so they are allowed to have that moment. And we've not allowed that space in corporate America. We've literally trapped them in this like circle of crazy, right? And I hate that for them, right? I hate that moment for them, because even if they want to do better, they're almost trapped that they can't do better. And I'm not saying all of them want to do it or even know to do it, but the ones that do almost get trapped by this almost cycle. And it's really sad to see.
Well, and defining like doing better. I had this amazing course in university about courageous conversations about race, with, I think it's Singleton and Sign. And there's a quote that I keep with me that was by Tim Weiss. And it was this is in the 2000s, guys. This is not like a today thing. And they talked about virtual invisibility. And they said the virtual invisibility, that whiteness affords those of us who have it is like psychological money in the bank, the proceeds of which we cash in every day while others are in a perpetual state of overdraft. And if we don't lead knowing our blind spots, we have like such a disadvantage for every person that comes in behind us, trusting us to lead them. And so we really have to look at how are we naming inclusion?
Right.
If we ask every person who we work with tomorrow, we'll get different definitions. So having that understanding of what is inclusion and engaging perspectives and allowing them to be real perspectives, not dominated by our view or our life experiences as the leader, is so important, because we can self-reflect, but if we do it as at a superficial level, it's not going to take our companies very far. And then also looking at defining the actions of what we now want to see for our inclusion, like what does a truly inclusive workspace look like? And how do we hold each other and everyone in it accountable? And then going back to that virtual invisibility of the dominant belief or the dominant race or the dominant gender, and making sure that we're getting self-checked by others who don't look like us or aren't the same gender or don't identify in the same way, so that we can make sure that we are truly being inclusive, but not doing it at a superficial level.
Shoot, I just took my shoe off. I was going to throw it right through the daggum. I literally, like, I'm going to throw it at the camera. Daggum.
I think one thing that comes to mind too with what Emery's saying is we don't even like pause long enough to meet people in those moments. We don't even pause enough to care for each other, to see that coming around the corner, right? And that's when, you know, I know we're all pretty adept at this and talking about EQ, and we're going to do some reflection. But the other piece that I see, and I've had these hard conversations with leaders, is this place where they find themselves with this information, or someone who is confronting, and I mean that in the healthy ways, not the harmful ways, confronting them with what they've seen and experienced that may be different than the EQ of that leader allows. So the leader thinks it's okay, and it's like, ooh, that is not the experience you created. Let me help you understand what this felt like. And I've had those conversations with my own clients. It is not easy, but in order to feel seen and to not exclude and to have the real full conversation and to be in humanity together, we have to take that moment and be like, time out. That did not feel good. That is leading out front, and it should not matter, and nor should you have to be concerned about, oh, well, that's my client, or, oh, that's the boss. We all deserve that baseline psychological safety. So I had to, that was like bubbling up. I had to get it out.
No, you got it, girl. And I believe, like I always say, that I lead from the front because of me every single time you see me in the room, right? Like I'm going to be Desiree when you get me, whether you're white, black, like neurodiverse. I don't, like, you get me, and I may tailor how I respond to your interaction from that. But like, you always get me leading from a place of empathy and concern, and how you get to your goals and how I can make you better. That's the end goal, right? Like, I don't, like, at the end of the day, it's not so much about me, because if you're better, I'm better, right? So I get me through you, right? So I'm gonna figure out you to get to me, right? And so that for me is so I heard, oh my God, that was like, I got goosebumps on you, Tiffany, right there, because that was like, I mean, it hits me every time. I don't have to change me. What I have to figure out is how I hear you, right? And that is huge. That is a huge moment as a leader. Like, how do I hear my people? And that's a differentiator in the market.
It is.
Most people don't even listen.
No,
Or they don't even know how to listen.
No,
That's a whole nother, maybe that's next time's topic.
I mean, that's the next show. Let's talk about active listening.
active listening. Like, yeah. Well, I will mark that down.
Let's talk about that on the next show.
If we will be like, it'll be a 3-hour thing. It'll be like, this is a webinar for a master class. Yeah.
We'll bring slides.
I know.
virtual margaritas for
I was gonna say, I'll bring the margaritas and
I think
pizza.
For
and
some
pizza
reason.
and food.
And a foosball table.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. You know, one of the I keep thinking back, and I know I've said this to this group, but I'll say it to people in the audience as well. I think of the things that happened in 2020 and this turning point where the world's on fire, things are just nuts everywhere. There's so much going on, and all these companies decide now we're going to really going to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I know, like most of you on this call, I got on my soapbox and was like, where have you been? Like, what's going on? And I'm saying that as a white guy in, you know, almost, I'm approaching 60, and I'm looking back at my career and thinking, man, all the things I've seen, and now you're just wanna, and then we saw the box checking, and then now we're having to figure out all this other stuff, but we're progressing, but we still need to do better. And I say all of this because I realized during the course of this, just like I said about raising my hand, I took Dr. Marie Ristow's tests when she was developing this test. I'm thinking, I'm going to crush this. It's all of these things. It's going to show you how you're doing in these different aspects of your level of diversity and how you see things differently. And there was one section in particular, and I did not get the grade that I was thinking I was going to get. And I'm going through the whole process, answering honestly and answering the way I felt like I should be answering, not how I was expected to, but how I felt. And I got back this test results, and I literally, I know that I felt like, oh no, this can't be, no. I think there is this realization and awakening for anyone in this industry that you are constantly having to take a look at yourself. You constantly have to do the work internally so that you can do the work externally. And I forgot that. So that was a great lesson. And it was a great lesson. And it has stood with me. I'll probably be telling this well into my 70s. I remember the time that
I always say it though, if you can't figure out what's going on in here, how can you tell somebody to do it out there? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. And like, I constantly go in this circle of self-reflection. So, and it's not always good sometimes. You know, I get to the bottom line, just like you did with that test. And I'm like, oh girl, you need to work on some things. Yeah. Right? You know, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Right. And it's okay. But we in American culture, especially, have not said that's okay. If we find a failure in ourselves, we take that to a place that feels it's crazy. We're like, oh, I see this failure in me, so I'm going to compensate in these weird ways that we like work more or do these other things or put pressure on other people, and we do these crazy things. But it should just be a moment of self-reflection and be like, okay, I'm going to move from this. Right?
Absolutely.
And if we spent more time in that self-reflection, which I think is like, if I could go back and tally how many times each of us had said reflection. But if we spent more time in that, instead of trying to argue or counteract, oh, no. Like if Jason had sat there and been like, oh, no, wait, maybe this question was written wrong, or maybe this statement isn't. No, it's not about me. No, there's something different here, or you wrote that wrong, or you did this. Instead of just saying like, what is this thing about me?
Right.
And And how is it not portraying what I believe myself to be? And I mean, you want to get some good reflection. Ask key people in your life to like describe you with 5 words.
Oh,
What are
yeah.
the first 5
Oh.
words that come to their mind
Oh my
when you
God.
describe you, right? So powerful. And you could do like a
Another
year's worth of life
episode.
just with that. Yeah, sure. For sure. But there's lots of easy, simple ways to do it, but we make it so hard
Yeah.
on ourselves. And we put our energy in the wrong directions and the wrong things. And then we wonder why we're in the same place or we're not seeing the change in our employees that we want to see.
Yeah.
And it goes back to like, well, yeah, reflection isn't just I got these results and now I know I could do better. It's like, ooh, what is that going to look like? What are my actions going to be? Who's going to hold me accountable for doing it? Who's going to be my
Right.
thought partner on it? Those are
And those come
essentials.
through thoughtful questions, right? Like they're not asking the thoughtful questions that Dr. Ann would actually ask. You're asking those like very surface questions, right? Like,
Yeah.
did I hit my metrics? Did I do what my organization needed me to do? Did I hold up to the value of that organization? You're not asking those deep reflection questions that actually pierce what is actually happening with you.
Right. And people will actually say, well, I don't want them to be too uncomfortable. You know,
Yeah.
we don't want them to be too uncomfortable. And it's like, well, how do you get to define that?
Yeah.
Why do you get to decide
Right.
that? Because if any of us had a conversation about one thing, many of us would have such different levels of comfort with it.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And why can't that be okay?
Yeah.
Why do we have to sabotage it from the start?
So many different people cannot, well, so many leaders have a real problem with courageous conversations. And if you are not comfortable with having courageous conversations, then when we talked about self-reflection, that's a time that you need to self-reflect because courageous conversations go hand in hand with leading people. They just go hand in hand with it, because it shouldn't be that you do a performance review for someone once per year and you lay all this stuff out and they have no idea. They have no idea what you like. You never talked to me. Now all of a sudden you're telling me I'm doing a crappy job and you have all of these things. This is the first time you're ever telling me. It shouldn't be that way. When you have a performance review, I'm throwing it off topic, but I want to get to exclusion before we run out of time. When you are taking care of your people and you're getting to know them and you're having courageous conversations, they are going to be comfortable. They're going to get comfortable over time and learn to trust that you're giving them the information, that they know where they stand. So when they get their performance review, it's not a surprise. They know what they need to work on. They know what they're doing well. They know that you're in their corner and they know that they're safe to work on that. And so I feel like as leaders, that is such a huge issue that we are still so stuck on that metrics, the KPIs, the P&Ls, the bottom line, that we forget that the people are what make that happen. Mm-hmm. And without them and without doing the work to put into your people, all the way from the moment that you are talking about hiring them to the moment that they are in and working as part of your community, that you are taking care of them and then they feel like they are part of that team. But I want to end, because this was all about inclusion, but I agree absolutely, Desiree, that exclusion and inclusion kind of go hand in hand. So I want to end with the conversation and kind of go round robin and everybody kind of jump in. But what is it about the exclusion piece that is so tied to inclusion, and why does it matter? And why does it matter, especially in a workplace?
Don't start with me.
Is that because no one else has time to talk, or is that what are we?
No, I gotta formulate my thoughts, Jason. I gotta get
Oh
them
my
all
God.
together because I can talk
Oh
about
my
that
goodness.
topic for like 18 hours. I talk about it all the time. They're like, don't start with me.
Anybody
Okay,
jump
so
in?
I'll start, but it's just very raw because it's I just jotted a note when you were talking, Jason. And it's I will say to people, I don't like conflict. But I should have a little asterisk next to that because it really is like if I'm not in a culture where we can have courageous conversations, things go to conflict in a negative way, but conflict can be very good. So when we think about exclusion in an inclusive, when we're striving for an inclusive environment, I think about the way we define things and how we use that to almost tally mark or check mark people of there you go, you're different, therefore you cannot, instead of it being inclusive of all ideas are valued here and it adds value. And we know the research on the fact that diversity strengthens our work production, you don't have to worry about your numbers. Your return on investment is incredible if you take the time to then focus in. So for me, it's like that exclusion it's detrimental, and it counters everything that people truly desire and need to be able to not only function in their work environment, but that trickles out into everything else, all their other touch points as well.
Anybody else on exclusion?
Oh, we always see exclusion when we're talking about psychological safety, always. And it can be something as simple as language or Friday drinks. There's not only a lot of people sober for whatever reason, but a lot of people which I have to point out all the time when they're, leaders saying, oh, we have, Friday drinks, or we do a Christmas party or a whatever at the end of the year. And I always say, is there going to be alcohol served? And are staff expected to, is it mandatory to attend? Because for religious reasons and people's different beliefs, apart from being sober and choosing not to drink alcohol, that in itself can be exclusionary, and not, and aligning it as well to things like Christmas or a particular religious holiday. Those things are often things that don't occur to leaders when they're thinking about. They think, oh, it's an inclusion exercise, it's team building, we're getting everybody together to drink, eat, and be merry. But it can be exclusionary just because of how it's happening. So it's really thinking about what the how is. How are you bringing your team together? Think about, all of those things, the different people sitting around the room. And you will know this about your team if you engage with them as human beings one-on-one, right? I had a team back in Australia of over 120 staff, and they were all, I was the minority, which I loved because I learnt so much from those beautiful people, and all of them abstained from alcohol because of their religious beliefs. And we changed what we did to celebrate as a team, where it didn't include alcohol, it didn't reference alcohol. So it's just, I guess, a little bit of an example for me that sometimes we're well-meaning when we bring our teams together, but sometimes it doesn't bring your team together, it further divides them.
I mean, I could talk about this for days. I'm going to only end on this to say that I wrote that article, Navigating the Holiday Hustle, last year, and there was purpose for that because I believe that there is exclusion in how you do holidays and how you do team and how you do things. You literally exclude people by not even understanding what inclusion means.
Yeah.
Right? At the end of the day, because you don't understand inclusion, you're literally excluding people just by a word out of your mouth, right? By a Christmas party, or by a gift, or by a baby shower, or by what people do. You have to understand your team. I'm like in love with you right now. All the love, Kylie. Yes, I just want to say, if you don't understand what your team makeup is, you can't understand what exclusion means or inclusion. Because your team makeup, who you lead, I lead probably 40 people right now. I understand their personal values and morals and whatever that means. And so celebrations look different. My language look different. And so inclusion can mean so many things. Exclusion means also understanding inclusion. Just saying. Chase and I know you have to go. So
No. Look, it is. This has been awesome. This is so awesome. I feel like, I just want to say this at the end, and then we'll kind of tie stuff up. But you also, when we exclude people and we do things without thinking through it, without having that inclusion moment, without knowing our people, with having the great intention but really not thinking through it very well, we trigger people. And in this world now where we are really, it's a hotbed mess that we talk about mental health, and it's being thrown around a little, for me personally, it's being thrown around a little too lackadaisically, because I think it really is a strong conversation that needs to be part of every company. It needs to be part of every organization not worried, but focused on making sure that holistically sound their team is, and that mentally and physically they are taken care of. And I think that we have all the right intentions all over social media about mental health and checking in on people and all of this great stuff. But I think I want to put that hashtag, that do better. I feel like we need to do better, Desiree, in making sure that as leaders, that inclusion piece, that exclusion part, that knowing our people part, that being a better leader, that doing better really includes the safety, the psychological safety, and the mental well-being of our people. Are we paying them living wages? Are we taking care of them? Are we giving them psychological safety? Are we making sure that they have the tools necessary? Are we building a community out of trust where people can thrive and grow as they want to? Any last things from anybody that wants to, and then we will wrap this up. You guys have been so awesome. As several different people in the audience have said, man, this could be a mini series. I'm going to be pulling pieces of this for weeks, but this is so awesome. And I am so blessed to know all of you. I'm so blessed that all of you are partners with us. I am so blessed to know all of you, and how you do the work that you're doing just means the world to me. You are making great strides and you are changing the world. So thank you.
well, thank you, Chasen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My last comment would be that, to cap on what you said, intention doesn't mean action. So just remember that, right? Everybody, intention doesn't mean action. Do some action.
Amen.
Do better.
Do
better.
better. Do better. I got to put
We
it
can
in.
always do better.
Do better.
Better. Boom.
Yeah.
Wow, this has been amazing. You have been listening to our People Community event. HR for You is about empowering leaders and their organizations to do better. And this has been Desiree Goldey, Kylie Van Luyn, Dr. Marie Ristow, and Tiffany Castagno in the house. We are going to give it up one more time for them. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being in the audience. Thank you for everyone that is watching this now. Everyone that's on Team Replay, our allies for Replay Good. Love you to death. Thank you very much. Have a great evening, everyone.